What is the value and importance of building trust across an organization? And maybe more important, how can that actually be done practically, particularly in a company that is global and fully remote, like Yodo1 Games? That is what I talked about with James LaLonde. He's the co-founder, co-CEO of Yodo1, and we really covered this very important topic from different angles, from the big picture of what is it like to work in a low trust versus high trust environment? What is this idea of the speed of trust? You won't want to miss that. And on a more day-to-day level, how do you build trust with colleagues, between teams? What are the mechanisms you need to have in place to make sure that trust is something that can be built, that you can get the benefits of trust? So, very interesting, very insightful. I think you'll enjoy it. So here's my conversation with James. James, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about trust, and I saw the offsite conversation or talk that you did with the team in Thailand, but I thought we could maybe dig into a little bit more. Could you sort of lay out what it feels like to be in a high trust versus low trust workplace in general?
First of all, high trust, you feel like you can expose yourself and not turned up, being hung out to dry, right? So you can ask questions, even stupid questions, or I don't know this, but I probably should, but I don't. So I just want to make sure because I want to have understanding. You feel like you can ask those questions in a meeting and not just be kind of have a cold shoulder turned on you or laughed or go, oh my God, people, that's really key. If you know about me and my philosophy, being curious is the cornerstone to almost everything about learning. You got to have a place where you can be curious, and then you got to want to know what's being said around you. Then that then kind of dovetails into, well, can I put an idea forward? Is it okay for me to have a new idea and say it publicly? And, is it okay to make a mistake? Now, and a lot of people think, oh, well, you told me it was a place where I can make mistakes, but then there's a way you make mistakes. So if you get buy off and you let people know that you intend to do something and you put forward your, this is what I think is going to happen, as you say in Yodo1 parlance, WDSLL, what does the success look like? And you pitch the idea that you've proposed and it doesn't turn out, then you're the first one to say, hey, it's not working out. And you guys supported me. I appreciate it, but let's kill it. Let's stop it, whatever. That kind of mistake making should be totally fine in a high trust scenario.
What's the other type then?
Oh, the other type is like you don't tell anybody, you do something, it causes the bank to fail or the product to die, or you change something and major catastrophe occurs and you didn't tell anyone about it, or you did some things that may affect other people but you weren't aware of it. So that kind of making mistakes is really not good.
So high visibility mistakes where you're taking a deliberate action and you know that it could fail and everyone else does too.
Sure.
But right.
I mean,
so
you're in a situation where it was okay to ask questions, okay to have a new idea, okay to garner support for a new idea, and your opinion matters. And so then people say, all right, then you get kind of buy off and you do it. And then if it doesn't work out, you say, well, we all agreed on this and I did my best, and we do a postmortem or whatever and we move on. That's a healthy way to make a mistake versus, what in the hell was that person thinking? How did that happen? Why did we not see that? Boom. And a kind of a train wreck happen. We like to have everything as much as possible out in the open. We record all our meetings. We share our notes. We express our opinions in the plain sunlight. Usually, damaging mistake, if properly sunshined, you won't get to making it because it'll be kind of noticed or fixed or improved upon before you get to a point where you've taken us down the trail without letting us know.
I'm curious, in your storied career, have you seen opposite cases where, low trust environments? Obviously, I can think of life-related things, anecdotes, but have you seen culture around low trust and how that can have a negative sort of impact?
Unfortunately, most people spend most of their life in low trust environments. The high trust environment is the rare case scenario typically. And if you're in one of those, and you'll always remember it as one of the highlights of your career or whatever. But most companies are rife with politics. There's a pecking order, there's a bureaucracy, is more of a kind of minimize the downside versus maximize the upside kind of thinking. On top of all that, your boss probably micromanages you to make sure you don't make mistakes. And it's all about being careful and surviving versus being the best version of yourself at work. And that's typically most people's experience of work, unfortunately. If you have several kind of high trust environments, then you would consider yourself in the minority, I would think.
Yeah, it feels good.
Yeah.
It feels good, and then when it's sort of like the love thing. If you truly love someone, you should be able to let them go, but then they'll come back to you. That feeling of knowing that you're trusted, and I'm speaking from personal experience, knowing that you're trusted makes you want to be more responsible, makes you want to not have to hide things, makes you want to, do the right thing and do your best.
And that it's just creates this amazing kind of positive flywheel that trust environments tend to foster.
So I think that ties pretty well into the speed of trust concept. Could you just walk through the main points?
Well, I thought of a couple of examples that maybe come to mind that I'll just share. I mean, one, if you are a little bit older and you are traveling around the world or around the country here in America where I'm from, pre 9/11, getting on a plane was pretty much like getting on a bus. You bought a ticket, got in line, got on. Yeah, you had a small baggage check, but it wasn't a big deal. No one ever imagined that people would be using planes as weapons of mass destruction, and that more people would die in that one day than in the first couple of years of the Vietnam War and things like that. So when that happened, the trust that we had in the general population, for obvious reasons, went down. So what was the effect? Well, the effect is that you lost speed. So going through customs, the checks, the no-fly lists, just the cost of travel also went up. The U.S. government decided they had to take over security in every airport, everywhere in the U.S. And then you created a huge bureaucracy. I think it's 100,000 people strong or more, and it's amazing the cost of that. And they created a Department of Homeland Security. I mean, the cost from that one event because the trust had been lowered is just massive. We fought a war on terror on that. So I mean, you think about it in a business sense, then you have to have all kinds of security in place. Extra security, you have to do extra background checks. You need to do all kinds of HR related measurements and that would add to the cost. And then you have to maintain offices so you can see them, or can you go completely remote? And so if you don't trust someone in your organization, then you're going to build buffers into your product commitments or your delivery commitments, because you can't really rely on the capabilities of the fact that your team's going to get something done, or that it's been discussed properly, or all the things that need to be considered have been brought to light. Basically, high trust, speed goes up dramatically, costs go down because things happen faster and you don't have to spend a lot of cycles on checking and double checking and triple checking. Low trust environments, your speed goes way down, your cost goes way up.
Can I ask though a follow up on that? So, I get what you're saying, that when you have a low trust scenario, you're essentially baking inefficiencies into the entire system, and that's going to slow things down and increase costs. But how far does that extend on the opposite side? Surely you have to measure some things. Where do you put those measurements, and how much do you have to check still in a high trust situation?
Yeah, I mean, in a high trust environment, I think there's a concept of a trust battery. Like you and I work together in a startup. This is our second startup working together. We have many years. So if I ask you to look after my house for a day, or or do something
Party
for me.
time.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay. Uh-oh. So then next time I
I've been
won't ask.
saving it up.
So and this is a part about trust people don't understand. There's this intimacy thing. There's a part of it that's, really about, do they do their work? Do they get stuff done on time? Are they reliable? And that kind of consistency is a very strong part of it. And but the intimacy. So in a high trust environment, you need to have all those factors. And in our scenario, certainly at Yodo1, where we work from anywhere, developing and maintaining that intimacy is a challenge.
I was just sort of curious about how radical the trust should be, or for optimal high trust sort of situations.
Well, I'll just give you an example. I mean, there for expenses over a certain amount of money, it needs to follow a process, and we make that process as efficient as possible. It's all online. It's all a couple button clicks, but we do have a process for that. And when we have to do checks and balances like that, we do. We try to make them really automated and quick.
I can just share a very quick little anecdote that you just reminded me of there, because we just did this video shoot that happened in LA, and it happened on very short notice. And that was something that I was sort of managing and facilitating. If that were in a low trust environment, it would not have happened. It had to happen very quickly because, I didn't know where the team was going to be. It was very dynamic. So you have to know that you're in that high trust environment in order to know that you can take those actions.
Well, I don't know if it's public knowledge, but I mean, you and I had one conversation about it, and I said, I think it's an interesting opportunity. Go do something, make it interesting, and don't tell me about it.
Yeah.
Because that's the level of trust we had, because I wanted you guys to be as creative and not have to run things by me and slow you down, right? So
Exactly. Well, maybe we can get into the battery concept and maybe the sort of the components of that. You talked about credibility. I think before you've talked about credibility, reliability, into the intimacy part and the self-direction part as part of this sort of trust battery concept. Could you talk a little bit more about the trust battery as a tool in business specifically, not just individual trust, but as a sort of business tool?
well, let me explain it with an analogy that I live with every day. I drive an EV. I drive a Tesla, so it has a battery. It doesn't have any gas. There's no other way to power the car but electricity. And in many occasions, I've run it to within 8-10 miles of stopping, literally. So what does that entail? It means I need to know that Tesla's got enough facilities, and the car is going to remind me in the right space of time, and that's that the time it reminds me is going to be accurate, so that I'll be able to get to a charging station or plug the car in or whatever. So it's the charging network, it's the quality and the build of the software and the hardware of the car, it's the management of the company that you kind of trust. I have to get my kid to school, so I know that the GPS system works within a factor of a minute or two. And so all that experience that I have and those different factors of trust create a very full battery of trust with that particular company or car. Now, that's similar to what I have with you when using your anecdote. We've had enough, close calls, and we've worked together enough, and we've made things happen on the fly and on low budget and in our past. And so, full battery there with Mr. Luke Pretty, as far as I'm concerned. And so, I know that I'm going to trust you to the 8th mile left on the battery kind of thing. I don't know if that's a good example, but that's kind of how I see it.
I think it is, because there's an important time component, and the time component can go up, it could go down. But when it goes down, how do you look at the battery? Can the battery, let's say it drains, someone loses your trust, or trust is lost within an organization, within Yodo1, for example?
Yeah,
Can it be built up?
I'll give you a really good example that happens a lot in companies where you have someone that you've hired for a specific job, okay? And in that specific job, they exhibit incredible consistency, quality of effort, results, everything, all right? And you think, wow, amazing employee, good teammate, good person. Let's promote them or give them a bigger job or have them manage people, God forbid. And then with this different job description, they start very quickly running that battery down because they're going through a learning curve. They don't know how to deal with situations. They make judgmental errors. And if they're not seeking the advice they should get, then they're going to make a much higher number of errors. And the person hasn't changed. Still the son or daughter of the same parents, same, nothing's happened, changed with the person mindset. It's just the job description, or, is changed. So that's something that happens a lot. So for this particular role that you're in and this level of ownership that you have over certain things, you may have the highest trust battery in the world. But as soon as that's a different job, that's going to come under scrutiny, most likely.
From a leadership standpoint, then, do you see that as an opportunity to ju- help that person build the trust battery back up in that new environment, or maybe that's not the right place for them because the battery is being drained?
Going back to the first things we talked about in a high trust environment, the fact that you're able to openly share with your manager, hey, this is really difficult for me. I don't know how this person who works on my team ticks. All of a sudden, I can't get any response out of them. Whereas when I was in a different department or a co-worker with them, it was fine. And so unless that person feels like they can share that stuff with their manager or others, and the persons that they're having difficulties with, then the likelihood of them getting through it is going to be pretty low. And so in the low trust companies that are really bureaucratic and always you're trying to minimize the downside, people tend to stick to one job, and then they don't move around so much in the company, and then they either quit and go to another similar job. I think a good barometer for a company that's healthy is that where people can move laterally up and sometimes even backwards down and still move around in the company, not always just straight up like a rocket. If you can then recalibrate with putting them back in the role they were before, or a different lateral role or something, and see if they adjust better to that, then you save a good person and a potentially amazing employee.
I agree. I think it's sort of like to me, the mantras, the core principles kind of act as this foundation, and then because of that foundation, those kinds of things are possible. It's possible to build up trust, and it's possible to experiment and try new things within that framework of the principles, including, I tried this, it didn't work for me, but I think I could do something somewhere else. Can you help me, work with that? And that tends to be what happens. I think that's possible because we have that framework of the mantras.
I've had different roles in this company. Okay. Like I'm getting heavily involved in publishing, which is not necessarily something I'm, the world's expert on. The company is really good at publishing. I've been focusing on other things as far as new businesses and new business units. And so I go into situations all the time where the people that I'm working with on a day-to-day basis have a fairly low level of trust with me that I have to build up over time. And the best way to build up trust is to keep things simple, let people speak their minds, and keep things really in the sunshine, but keep them focused on what we're going to accomplish together, and then actually accomplishing things together, which sounds really simple, but it's actually really hard to do. And so if you can define what you're going to accomplish together and then actually do it, and then celebrate, and then kind of expand and move on, and then doing that repeatedly, that's how you build trust. That's how you charge the battery.
That sort of ties nicely into what I wanted to get into next, which is more the sort of hands-on at Yodo1 specifically. Um, I want to talk about the remote working component of this at Yodo1. So Yodo1 is a work from anywhere remote work company, very much leading the way in this area, but it's not like it's easy all the time. And so I'm curious how you see this as it relates to people all over the world in how many countries now? Over 40, something like that.
Over 40.
How does that work for a global remote company?
Well, let's just talk about the differences. So when we were based in Beijing, you know, we had a birthday party every month. We had a large office and we had a large employee base, but we would all gather once a month in a party setting, and everyone who had a birthday in that month we'd have a party with them. And I mean, I knew every single person in the company. I mean, I had conversations with them, and that was the office dynamic. You could kind of see what hours they kept, how have they had food all over their desks, or how they worked, how they organized their life, how much time they spent on the phone or in the meeting rooms. You could see you had a lot of empirical evidence just by what's going on around you.
You can
You
watch them
could
on the
see
security cameras
all
if you
the
want to.
animals in the zoo running around. Now
All
we
the
don't get
animals at the zoo.
pet
Yeah.
the animals. It's not a petting zoo anymore, right? So,
I hope
so
nobody was being pet.
no violations on that side. But it's not a very touchy feely scenario, right? And so we are
Right.
literally, we do not have a physical office that people show up at. We don't even have a hybrid office. We have some places where we have a core number of people where they can kind of like co-work together, but it's not, it's
They're
not
hubs. There's a
like
Pakistan hub and there's a Beijing hub.
it's just not, it's not an office. It's not intended to be one. So we have to build all this trust, over video and writing,
Yeah.
So we believe in a thing called pitch club. So we teach people how to pitch. We have a forum for that. It's everyone in this company has been to pitch club. It's something we care about. And the concept of pitch club is that you go into the pitch and you don't necessarily know who the audience is, and you don't necessarily know if they know what you're going to talk about or care about it, but then you have 3 minutes to let them leave knowing what you're going to talk about and care about it and have an opinion about it, and make them feel like they didn't waste their time. Really believe in this. You have to do something. You have to do it regularly to become good at it, and you learn. So we do that. And that's a foundation. And personally, I went to Japan early in my career before I mastered the language as I do now. But I had to sell software to Japanese corporations, and all I could do was over prepare before the meeting, anticipate questions, do the best I could in the face to face scenario by judging body language and learning the right words, and then come out and then follow up me. And then what I found is that if I exemplified an incredibly credible person, I I did what I said, what I promised you, I followed up on. I didn't waste your time. That I, of all people, could still sell things to people in Japan with my poor language capabilities. But so there's really nothing that limits you if you can figure out the dynamic and learn to master that communication dynamic. So that's why we took the leap to go, not wait around and see what everyone else does. We went full into WFA, work from anywhere. I mean, it's something I've built my whole career on. So I believe in it strongly. I'm in a situation now where I don't know in the sense of physically having met Henry, myself, we don't know more employees than we know as far as we've had a meeting with them. We've seen them physically, been in the same room with them. Okay. So we communicate smart. When we propose something, we start with WDSLL. Okay. What does success look like? And we communicate with a lot of sunshine, or in the sunshine, as we say, where people can see what we're doing, and we're not afraid to put ourselves out there and say, I believe this, I'm going to get behind this, we're doing this. The main thing that really, though, at the end of the day, if you do those things, if the customers respond to your product and people buy it and you're very attuned to their needs, it really drives a lot of positive energy in the company. So, we try to stop people from assuming that they know something. If they don't know anything about what's been said, or if something's written unclearly, or if something's said unclearly, to ask a question. So we really, to an almost, tedious degree, focus on, your written communication, your spoken communication, and the cadence of your communication. How often do you show up in the sunshine talking about progress updates, whatever? We spend a lot of time on that, and we give you the tools, and we have a lot of support for people who want to get better at that. That's one way we do it. The second thing we do is we allow you to get together as long as it makes sense. We're in a game industry. There's a lot of game events around the world. We try to use those events to get people together. We have a pretty open attitude about having people get together who are in the same country or similar or nearby cities for just a day or two in the office together, and we'll allow them to rent out a space and just do their work together physically, have dinner or whatever, or lunch together, but also maybe come up with an idea or two that they want to share with us. We do a lot of stuff where it's async, where you can just record, again, a pitch, 3 to 5 minute, hopefully 3 minute or less thing and a lot of the ideas get reviewed and checked out and agreed upon, and meetings happen at times when some people can't attend. So then they watch it later and then add their comments in, and we all see that. So we're continually kind of evolving and just experimenting with those things.
And it kind of puts the burden also on the quality of the communication when you don't have the office, because when you have the permanent office, you are relying on all of those other cues that you were talking about, seeing the state of someone's desk and seeing them go in and out and watching their habits over time and communicating with them, and all of that stuff that you don't get then puts the burden on clear communication, which is ultimately what's really important when it comes to getting stuff done, right? And so it's sort of forcing very clear, transparent communication because we're in this medium of being everywhere and communicating online, right?
You said an amazing thing, and it actually, a lot of people don't kind of connect this, but our communication is so much better now than it was when we were in the office, because being in the office,
no choice. What are you going to do? Yeah.
You just think that things are going to, you might whisper in someone's ear, or you might have an impromptu conversation between 2 or 3 people. An idea might get formed, it might get acted upon, and no one else in the company knows. And that happened all the time. And you think that's great spontaneity, but actually it's not responsible spontaneity when you can share it. There's no kind of thought, and you're not getting the benefit of the best minds. I don't think there's anyone in our company now that thinks that the overhead of communication that we ask for slows anything down. It definitely makes up for itself in speed of decision making. But right. In the office, a lot of kind of random conversations that turned into, that or random conversations that didn't really help the business go forward, or just a lot of typically not. Oh, well, had the meeting yesterday. You weren't here, but we had it, and it was in that office there. What happened? And were there any meeting notes? No. What are you doing now? How are we spending money now because of that meeting? None of that's documented. And so we do have a burden of documentation and forthright conversation and transparency now. It's increased the decision making to the extent that it's so much faster than it was when we were all in the office together.
Yeah, I just wonder if you have any practical tips for how colleagues, specifically in Yodo1, can maintain trust between each other. If you were just going to give, some quick, here's what you want to do if you want to maintain and build trust with your teammates, with the people you work with in general.
There's a couple things here. One is you just need to be respectful and baseline type stuff, like I've had problems with this as much, if not more than anyone else, of just, you need to trust that people have to have the ability to speak up. It's our culture, so let them speak up. Don't try to railroad or ram things down people's throats. Be respectful of people's opinions. Do keep them honest on time constraints. That's one thing that's really important. And then you have to lead by example. I don't really ask anything of anyone that I am not or have not done myself. Um, and you need to be able to, you need to earn that kind of respect, and you have to be humble. I mean, you have to be able to. A lot of times, I find it sets the tone better if I talk about my mistakes first, or why I'm not sure I understand this, and can you help me? Asking people their opinion first, seeing if they have an opinion. They may not. They may have a strong opinion. Asking people what they think is an amazing tool, and we try to do that as well. I think that engenders trust.
I've seen that also happen in stuff that I work on. Just there's something I could do by myself that's the
Yeah.
greatest thing ever, and then I finish it, it's done, it's perfect, and I say, "Hey everyone, here it is." And people
Yeah.
would say, "What is this thing you're doing?" Right? But if I had involved everyone throughout the process, then now they're bought in, not only because they're actually helping me create it and giving feedback in this when I'm scoping it, but they're bought in because they understand from an early stage, why am I doing this? Right? And that was something I had to learn, I think, a long time ago, but it's so important. And if you just, it doesn't matter, being good at something is not the most important thing necessarily.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
if you think about it, the fundamentals, so being time bound and measurable, smart, right? Doing something with the purpose in mind, the end result in mind first, WDSLL, and then communicating in a way where it's in the sunshine early. Don't bring me something you think is perfect, because every time I've thought something I've done by myself is perfect, as you know personally from working with me, that I get your feedback or others' feedback, and I go, "Oh yeah, it's pretty good," but or it's not as good as I thought it was, and this could be improved. Ideas always and things get improved when they're exposed to the right people. And
Yep.
the cool thing about having SMART and WDSLL is, if there's an understanding of the priority and the time constraints and why we're doing this, because we've defined that in the beginning, if you do that extra work in the front, then it speeds everything up in the end. So it's like this whole concept that I've really embraced my whole life. I do the hard stuff first, and the rest comes really quick and easy. And so with communication and execution of ideas, that's important. Get that hard thought. Think about it first, and share it, and then get it done.
Yeah, do the hard stuff first and throughout. And then the end state, everyone is sort of there with you when you get to the finish line rather than it being a big mystery box.
Yeah, that's teamwork
It's
defined.
teamwork. Yeah. All right. Well, this has been great. Thanks a lot, James. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Thanks, Luke.